In the third year of my secret relationship with Ethan's best friend, his adopted sister returned. I decided to break up, quietly agreeing to the arranged marriage for alliance my family had set up. The engagement party was extremely private, with only the closest people invited. During the formal family welcome ceremony, my brother Ethan's cell phone rang. He answered, laughing as he chided, "You didn't even come to Audrey's engagement party. And our Audrey has been chasing you and calling you big brother since she was little." On the other end of the line, Julian's voice faltered, "Who did you say is getting engaged? What, did you break up with your mysterious boyfriend?" My brother Ethan's tone was teasing, tinged with satisfaction. I couldn't blame him. In our 3 years together, I had never agreed to go public. He had warned me long ago, "A man who's afraid to even come home with you to meet your family has no sense of responsibility. You'll break up sooner or later." But back then, I didn't believe him. I was convinced that true love could move mountains. Now, I faced a harsh reality. I replied calmly, "Yes, we broke up." Hearing the seriousness in my voice, silence fell on the other end for a moment. "Were you mistreated?" My heart, which had already settled, was suddenly filled with a bitter ache. I took a deep breath, shaking my head where he couldn't see. "No, it was an amicable breakup." "Good, otherwise I'd go after him." "Audrey, men can't be relied upon. If you must marry, marry someone for an alliance. Keeping your interests secure is what truly matters." "Okay, you arrange it. I'll be back the day after tomorrow." Just as I hung up the cell phone, Julian pushed the door open and walked in. "Who were you talking to on the cell phone?" Fearing he would see that I had been crying, I didn't turn around. "A classmate." He just hummed. He brushed past me and entered his study. In our 3 years together, he had always been distant. I always thought it was his inherently noble and aloof nature, that he disliked intimate contact. But then last night, I returned home early from a business trip. I had intended to quietly slip in and surprise him. The study door, usually kept tightly shut, was slightly ajar. Warm yellow light seeped from the crack under the door. I crept closer, and just as I was about to knock, I saw Julian inside, his expression filled with an unbearable intensity. His eyes were fixed on his cell phone screen, one hand reaching towards his lower body. I froze instantly. The photo on the screen was of no one else. It was Chloe, his childhood friend who had been fostered in Julian's home since she was little. He was so engrossed, he didn't even hear me open the door and leave. I found a hotel and checked in, sitting alone in silence for a long time. Finally, I understood. Julian's coldness towards me for the past 3 years wasn't his nature at all. And his refusal to publicize our secret relationship wasn't because he worried my overly protective brother, Ethan, would be angry with him. It was all simply because he didn't like me, but he needed someone to conceal his feelings for his nominal stepsister. So, I, who had been so eagerly chasing him back then, was conveniently placed in the role of his mysterious girlfriend. That evening, Chloe updated her social media post, "Landing back home tomorrow. Come pick me up quickly." After hanging up with Ethan, I took a taxi back to the mansion Julian and I shared. There were still some things I needed to take with me when I left. He was eating breakfast. He looked up, saw me return, and calmly instructed the housekeeper to prepare another portion. "I didn't know you'd be back at this time, so I didn't prepare anything for you in advance." I nodded, "Okay." It wasn't that he didn't know, he simply couldn't be bothered to know, much less care enough to ask. Hearing my reply, Julian paused his movements. He looked up from the news on his cell phone, a flicker of doubt passing through his eyes. Yes, if it had been before, I would have pouted, sat beside him, and snatched his breakfast, saying, "Since you forgot to prepare anything for me, I'll just eat yours." Or I would have hugged him from behind, pinched his ear, and asked him why he forgot to prepare for me, wondering if he didn't love me anymore. Clever as Julian was, he could certainly quickly sense my change. But he didn't say anything more, only nodded. "I'm heading to the office. Take your time eating." He took the suit handed to him by the housekeeper. He held it in his hand, hesitating for a few seconds. Just as I wondered if he was still waiting for me to jump up and help him put on his clothes, as I usually did, he slipped into the suit himself. His footsteps and the sound of the door closing faded away together. The housekeeper asked me, "Ms. Audrey, what would you like to eat?" I shook my head. "I'm not eating. Please prepare some shipping boxes for me, I need them today." I picked up my suitcase and went back to my room. When the housekeeper brought the boxes, I packed my clothes and personal belongings. Then, I went to Julian's walk-in closet. Over the years, I had given him many ties, cufflinks, clothes, watches, and other items. But he rarely wore them. Unless I forced him to wear them, these things would barely see the light of day. Just like me, his girlfriend, I could only be kept hidden. I swallowed the pain in my throat and one by one, took the things I had given Julian, packing them into boxes. It took a long time and much effort before I finally finished packing. I sat on the bed, breathing slowly. My cell phone received a message from Julian: "I've sent the driver to pick you up. He'll be there in half an hour." The wording was simple, with no explanation of the circumstances. He was certain I would never refuse his words. I laughed self-deprecatingly. Perfect timing. It was also time to tell him we were breaking up. The lights inside the CL shimmered. Once, this was one of my favorite places to visit. I grew up showered with affection, my personality as bright as fire. My close friends jokingly called me Northwood's Wild. At's college anniversary celebration, I first met Julian and was drawn to his aloof and restrained demeanor. I subtly inquired with Ethan about whether he was single. Ethan rolled his eyes. With his unapproachable type, icy personality, which girl would dare get close to him? A wave of delight washed over me. He was cold, I was passionate, a perfect match. Behind's back, I began to relentlessly pursue Julian, unable to stop myself. I even changed my college application from Northwood to Southport, where Julian was. When found out I had changed my application, he was furious and scolded me. But despite his scolding, he still cared for me, so he called Julian and asked him to look after me more often. I secretly smiled to myself, everything is going according to plan. At the time, I thought I was incredibly clever, that both Julian and Ethan were part of my scheme. But only today did I realize how foolish I had been. The waiter led me to the private room entrance. The atmosphere inside was lively. Someone teased, "Julian, you've always been so protective of your girlfriend, rarely bringing her out to meet us. Now is back, and she's been your favorite sister since childhood. So, I have to ask, which is more important to you, your girlfriend or your sister?" I stopped in my tracks. Holding my breath, I waited for his answer. Julian swallowed a mouthful of wine, but didn't answer. Chloe stamped her foot angrily, pouting as she looked at him. "Big brother." Only then did Julian's lips curl into a smile. The crystal wine glass clinked against the marble tabletop. His cool, clear voice rang out, "Girlfriends can be replaced, but a sister is unique. Who do you think is more important?" Oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps, the crowd cheered. Chloe stood up triumphantly, her index finger weeping across most of the people in the room. You lost the bet. Quick, send me the money." Julian was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Chloe explained, "They bet with me, wagering whether you cared more about your girlfriend or me. Everyone who lost has to transfer me 200,000. The crowd groaned dramatically about losing money, pulling out their cell phones to transfer funds. Julian watched their exaggerated reactions, letting out a scornful laugh. "Serves you right." I raised my hand and knocked on the private room door. The lively atmosphere suddenly froze. Julian looked over, and the seat next to him was automatically vacated. Julian hadn't often brought me to meet his friends, but each time, he seemed to acknowledge my presence. When I had pursued him for a long time, almost defeated by his indifference, he had suggested I attend a party with his friends. That time, his friends told me, "Sister-in-law, aside from Chloe, Julian has never brought any other girl here before." At the time, I only considered Chloe his sister. I didn't think much of it. I even sweetly believed that Julian was merely outwardly cold and poor at expressing himself, but that he genuinely cared about me. But now, looking back, it was merely an act for his friends once or twice, or perhaps just his inherent good manners. For him, it was a completely cost-free tactic that allowed him to alleviate my doubts and secure my complete obedience and devotion. My thoughts returned to the present. I ignored the empty seat beside Julian. I sat in the furthest corner from him. Julian's expression darkened. "Audrey?" I just smiled, offering no reply. Chloe, standing nearby, picked up a glass of wine and walked towards me. "You must be Audrey, right?" "I'm Chloe, Julian's." She hesitated over her words, not quite finishing the sentence. Julian interjected, "His sister." Chloe frowned, a flicker of impatience crossing her face. She handed me the wine, replying defiantly, "Yes, is sister. I just returned home, and I'd like to toast you, Audrey." It didn't take much sensitivity to instantly notice Chloe's hostility towards me. It was certainly not the hostility a sister would feel towards her brother's girlfriend. Turns out, Chloe liked Julian too. Recalling self-gratification in the study, I felt a great sense of absurdity. I smiled faintly, "Welcome. But I'm not feeling well, so I won't drink." Chloe's mouth turned down. Audrey, you're really not giving me any face, are you? I've come all this way back, and this is my welcome party. I'm toasting you, and you won't even drink? I said, I'm not feeling well. Chloe's dissatisfaction grew stronger on her face. She turned back to Julian. Big brother, does Audrey dislike me? Julian's gaze was devoid of warmth, and his tone was completely flat. Audrey, don't be dramatic. Drink it. I almost let out a cold laugh. You called me here just to make me drink? He slightly raised his eyelids, answering indifferently, Chloe wanted to see you. So, it was just because Chloe wanted to see me. It was merely to make them both conform to societal morals and face reality, using me as a tool to ensure neither of them harbored illusions about the other. I stood up. Now that you've seen me, can I leave? Perhaps sensing my unexpected defiance today. A dark storm brewed in Julian's eyes. I knew he was angry, but I no longer wanted to humor him. What exactly have you been stirring up from morning till night? The atmosphere in the private room chilled with his lowered tone. I looked back at him, smiling meaningfully. Julian, I know all about your dirty, despicable schemes. I'm not playing your games anymore. I turned to leave, but Chloe grabbed my wrist. Audrey, I'm the guest of honor today, and I haven't agreed to let you leave yet. I yanked my hand free and slapped her across the face. Is it because you're an orphan that you have no manners? I strode through the dim corridor. The sounds of infamy, liar, drunken provocations echoed around me. A fire raged within me, urgently needing cold air to extinguish it. It wasn't until I walked out of the club's main entrance that I could finally exhale. To clear my head and gather my thoughts, I didn't call a taxi, choosing instead to walk along the roadside. But I hadn't walked far. A car suddenly pulled up beside me. I instinctively stopped, reached for my cell phone in my bag, and pressed my emergency contact. Julian. The next second, several masked men in black simultaneously emerged from the car. A sack was pulled over my head, and I was knocked unconscious with a forceful blow. When I awoke again, I was in an abandoned factory. My hands and feet were tightly bound, and my body was suspended high in the air. One of the men in black spoke, "Lower her a bit." My body was suddenly lowered. With a rag stuffed in my mouth, I cried out incoherently. Only if the rag were removed could I understand their purpose and negotiate for a chance to escape. But before I could speak, a burly man slapped me hard across the face. The blow left me dizzy and disoriented. The man, wearing a mask, spoke, "Ms. Audrey, my apologies, but we're paid to do a job. Blame yourself for offending the wrong person. Pass a message to our client. If you behave yourself and endure these 100 slaps, you can walk out safely. But if you dare to scream or go to the police, he promises that every day of your life will be filled with constant danger." My eyes filled with tears. I was both in pain and terrified. The man gestured towards the camera above. "Sir, may we begin?" A reply came from the other side, "Yes." I felt as if I'd been struck by lightning, my entire body stiffening. Even with just one word, I immediately recognized Julian's voice. My mind instantly connected the dots. He had arranged for me to be kidnapped and slapped 100 times. It was to avenge Chloe for what happened earlier. I bit down on the rag, sobbing towards the camera. He truly was madly in love with Chloe. He couldn't stand for her to suffer even the slightest grievance. But I never imagined he could be so heartless, just because I slapped Chloe once. Even if he didn't love me, I had at least devoted myself to him for 5 years, 3 of them in a relationship. Even if he didn't care about me, I was still his best friend's sister. How could Julian do this to me? I cried out, struggling with my whole body, hoping for a moment of conscience from him. There was no further response from the camera, and one slap after another landed. My face went from swollen to numb with pain. My mouth and face were covered in bright red blood. When I woke up again, I was at Prestige Center. Julian stood before the large floor-to-ceiling window, his back a tall, slender silhouette. Hearing movement, he turned to look at me. "You're awake." I curved my lips. "Disappointed you didn't beat me to death?" Julian's expression was grim. "Yesterday, you went too far. Chloe just returned to the country. You hit her in front of so many people. How do you expect her to save face? How will she establish herself in this circle in the future? So you decided to repay it 100-fold, is that it?" I yelled, throwing the glass of water from the windowsill at him. "You care about her reputation and situation, but what about me? If you like her, then go after her. Why use the pretense of brother and sister to sicken everyone else here?" "Audrey," he barked, his body trembling slightly. Dark clouds turned on his face, which was usually devoid of strong emotion. Julian stared intently at me. "Chloe will only ever be my sister in this lifetime. Go calm yourself down. Stop being so unreasonable." He turned and left. As he reached the door, he suddenly stopped. With his back to me, he spoke in a low voice, "I will compensate you for this. Didn't you always want to go public about our relationship with your brother Ethan and your parents? Next month, I'll go back with you to visit them." My lips twitched. I found it ironic. I had suggested telling Ethan many times before. He always found excuses to put it off. Now, after Chloe's return, he was the one taking the initiative. Was he afraid he wouldn't be able to control himself when facing Chloe? So he urgently needed a relationship to convince himself to give up hope. But why should I continue to be their tool? I sent a message to Ethan. "I'm coming back tomorrow." On the way home, Julian sat silently in the back of the luxury sedan. After revising his words several times in his head, the assistant finally couldn't help but speak. "Mr. Julian, if you keep favoring Miss Chloe and hurting Ms. Audrey like this, she might truly become disheartened. Ms. Audrey has been so good to you. In school, she was the universally recognized campus beauty. From her very first day, she had countless admirers, but her heart and soul were only for you. Her personality used to be so outgoing and bright, but now she's changed so much for you. You didn't like her tight clothes, short skirts, and wavy hairstyle, so she started wearing white dresses. You disliked irregular routines, and your health was deteriorating due to your busy schedule, so she went everywhere asking people for recipes to improve your health, personally buying ingredients and learning to make soup for you. You don't know, the first few times, her hands were covered in blisters from the burns. That time you had a stomach hemorrhage from drinking during business negotiations, she cried all night at the hospital. The next day, she still pretended everything was fine and smiled at you." The assistant couldn't continue. Even he felt deep sympathy for Audrey. He and Audrey were alumni, he had personally witnessed her passionate and free spirit. Now, seeing her constantly suppress herself to please Julian, yet still not measuring up to Chloe's place in Mr. Julian's heart, he felt she deserved better. Julian looked out the window, interrupting him in a low voice. "Too much talk." But the assistant couldn't stop himself from speaking. Thinking of his own love life, he spoke with a touch of regret. "Mr. Julian, a person's heart has limits. Once disappointment accumulates, it's very difficult to win them back." Julian's heart suddenly tightened. His mind suddenly replayed the stomach hemorrhage incident. After waking up, he saw Audrey's smiling face, her eyes red. The scene quickly shifted. The first time she brought him soup to drink, he noticed in his peripheral vision the blisters on her hands from burns. He only took one sip before telling her, "Don't make it anymore." He didn't want her to get hurt because of it. At that moment, a fleeting look of disappointment crossed Audrey's eyes. Yet she still lifted her face and smiled at him. "It seems you don't like matsutake mushroom chicken soup. Next time, I'll make you lotus seed and longan porridge." The next second, his mind was filled with the image from yesterday's surveillance footage. Audrey, disheveled and tear-filled, looking into the camera. Julian suddenly found it hard to breathe. He commanded, "Go back to the hospital." The assistant's face lit up. He immediately turned the car around. The car had just pulled up to the hospital when Julian's cell phone rang. Chloe's voice came through, "Big brother, I slipped in the bathroom, boo-hoo, it hurts so much." Julian's hand tightened around his cell phone. He looked up and saw that the light in Audrey's hospital room was still on. On the other end of the line, Chloe was playfully urging him to return. Julian took a deep breath, glanced at his assistant, and said, "Return to the estate." The assistant opened his mouth to speak, but Julian's voice suddenly rose sharply. "I said, go back." The assistant trembled all over in fright. He started the car. I stood before the window, intending to quietly ponder my future in the night. But then I saw Julian's car return. My heart stirred slightly. I didn't know the reason for his return. Was he coming to continue lecturing me, telling me not to bully Chloe in the future? Or had he had a change of heart, coming to apologize to me? Unfortunately, the car turned around and left again almost instantly. All of it became an unanswered question. I smiled with a sense of relief. It didn't matter anymore. I stayed awake all night, deleting everything about Julian from my cell phone's notepad. Then I opened my photo album and deleted all photos and videos related to him, one by one. After doing all this, I left the hospital just as dawn was breaking. The sky was still dark, and the road to the airport was smooth. Leaving him was far smoother than getting close to him had ever been. My mind suddenly recalled something I'd seen online not long ago. Fate will make you repeatedly experience the same things until you provide a new answer. Bid farewell to the wrong people and things, and your life will become smoother than you ever expected. I thought, even heaven was reminding me. To cut my losses now would bring future blessings. The plane landed smoothly at Northwood. Ethan, wearing sunglasses, leaned casually against a pillar, waving to me from a distance. Finally decided to come back? Seeing my family again and being back on this familiar land filled my heart with mixed emotions. I suppressed these emotions and raised an eyebrow at Ethan. That's right, back to check if you've been managing my family assets properly. Ethan let out a chuckle, still the same little firecracker, never letting anyone get the better of her. With that, he suddenly extended his long arm and pulled me into a hug. Alright, I'll take the defeat. It's not as important as my sister coming home. The tears I had just suppressed instantly welled up again. I raised my hand and wiped them away behind his back. Let's go, Ethan said, releasing me from his embrace and patting my shoulder. I prepared a surprise for you. What is it? Ethan's lips curved into a smile as he pointed in a direction without looking back. My brow twitched, and a bad feeling surged within me. I looked over. Standing there was a man who stood out remarkably in the crowd. Ethan's voice was a low hum. Come on, go say hello to your future husband in the arranged marriage for alliance. My heart almost stopped. Ethan's efficiency was incredibly high. I had only agreed to the arranged marriage for alliance the day before yesterday, and today he had already found my alliance partner. The crucial thing was, I had received 100 slaps to the face, and even with meticulous hospital treatment, it didn't look as exaggerated now. But the signs were still obvious at a glance. I didn't want Ethan to worry, and I wanted to avenge myself. So, from the moment I got off the plane until now, I had kept a face mask on, which was why no one had noticed. Yet, in this condition, Ethan was actually saying he wanted to take me to meet my alliance partner. My feet felt glued to the ground, unable to move. Ethan noticed my embarrassment and laughed aloud. What's wrong? You've always been fearless. How did 5 years in Southport make you timid? I said nothing, only brainstormed wildly. Let's skip it today. Let's not meet him. Ethan frowned. Why? I touched my face mask. I just had some cosmetic work done, and my face hasn't fully recovered. I'm afraid he'll be scared when he sees it and refuse this marriage you so carefully chose. Ethan, unfamiliar with such feminine matters, tried to reassure me. What are you afraid of? Who in all of Northwood doesn't know your beauty? Besides, he's not the kind of person you're worried about. Just then, seeing us not approaching, my alliance partner began walking towards us. I quickly took a small step, grabbed Ethan's hand, and interrupted him with a hint of pleading. Ethan. Ethan stopped speaking, sighed, and nodded in defeat. All right. He turned and walked towards the man. They spoke in low tones, a short distance away. My alliance partner glanced my way several times while listening to Ethan speak. I responded with a forced smile and a nod. Seeing him nod in acknowledgement and turn to leave, I felt a rush of relief. Back home, my parents were very excited. Regarding my face, I again claimed it was still recovering from cosmetic procedures. My parents, heartbroken, arranged for me to have nutritional supplements and delicious food. From morning till night, the kitchen was never idle. The housekeeper and my parents took turns tending to me, and I gained several pounds in just a few days. I pleaded, a mixture of happiness and helplessness. Can you please stop force-feeding me? Mom smiled dotingly. Perfect timing. Your brother Ethan said Daniel is coming to take you out today. You two can go for a walk to digest your food. I was puzzled. Which? Daniel, of course. Our former neighbor's little boy, have you forgotten? Daniel? I repeatedly recalled the name in my mind. Uncle's chubby little boy? Mom's eyes curved with a smile. He's certainly not chubby anymore. He's a handsome guy, 6'2" now. Hey, I remember your brother Ethan said he went to pick you up that day you returned. Didn't you see him? I then remembered the man who had waved to me from a distance and met my gaze that day. So that was Daniel, the little tag-along who had been behind me since childhood. Sure enough, the next second, my cell phone received a WhatsApp contact request from Daniel. I accepted, and he replied instantly, the weather's great, want to go for a walk? I looked at the message on my cell phone and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Dude, how can you be so old-fashioned? By the time I finished my makeup and went downstairs, Daniel was already sitting across from my mom. They were chatting casually, and my mom hadn't stopped smiling. Clearly, she was very pleased with my alliance partner. I cleared my throat, and their conversation was reluctantly interrupted. My quickly beckoned me over, gesturing to the stack of gift boxes piled on the coffee table. Look, they're all gifts Daniel brought for us and for you. I froze for a moment. Judging by the brands on the gift boxes, designer bags and jewelry, skincare products, and high-end wellness products. plus entire cases of fine wines, spirits, and gourmet teas. Anyone who didn't know better would think he'd come directly for the engagement ceremony. Unconsciously, my mind again drifted. I had pleaded with Julian so many times, wanting him to come with me and go public about our relationship in front of my parents. He had always refused. He would only send gifts to my parents every year during holidays, as Ethan's friend. I quickly rationalized his refusals, believing he simply wasn't ready for the change in status. And I eagerly looked forward to the day he would accept. But I never imagined that now, none of that would ever be possible. I reined in my thoughts, clicking my tongue at Daniel. Did you empty out the entire department store? I frowned, smiling as she patted me. Stop talking nonsense. Daniel smiled. I was actually worried these gifts wouldn't be enough to properly invite Ms. Audrey out. I smiled, urging us to go out and have fun. Audrey hasn't been out much since she came back, so I'm entrusting her to you today. Daniel politely assented, his manners impeccable. After getting into the car, we were suddenly confined together in a small space. I felt a bit awkward, making desultory attempts at conversation. Fortunately, Daniel was able to pick up every thread. And he could subtly start another interesting topic as the previous one wound down. My previously uneasy heart gradually calmed. Suddenly, my gaze was drawn to his car charm. It was a superhero sticker, made into a round acrylic car charm. The sticker clearly showed signs of age, indicating it had been carefully preserved by its owner. I covered my mouth and gasped, this couldn't be. Daniel tilted his head, okaying at me, his eyes full of laughter. Yes, it's the one you gave me when we were little. When we were little, the Gu family had just moved in. Daniel, being chubby and introverted, was often bullied by other boys. When I saw it, I rushed over with a stick and rescued him, and yelled at the group of children, if you ever dare to bully Daniel again, I'll knock you all out and send you to the police. The children made faces and scattered. I pulled Daniel, who had been pushed to the ground, up and lectured him like a little adult. If they bully you again, you need to bravely fight back. But seeing his wimpish look, with tears still clinging to his eyes, I couldn't help but wave my hand. Never mind, never mind. If they bully you again, just tell them my name. I'm Audrey. I took his hand and put a sticker on his arm. This is for you, my idol, the superhero. A memory flashed back, and I reached out to touch the car charm. I suddenly remembered that during the most chaotic period of Julian's business, his rivals were all watching him like hawks. Several times he was almost injured on the road. I specifically went to a monastery, performed a blessing ritual, and prayed for a lucky talisman car charm for him, hoping he would receive divine protection and be safe wherever he went. But that car charm was never hung in his car. Whether he cherished it or not was so clear. With encouragement from both the Gu family and my own, my relationship with Daniel progressed rapidly. We met almost every day, eating meals together and going shopping. We discussed the latest market industry news and trends. The date for our engagement was quickly finalized. The night before the engagement, I couldn't sleep, a mix of nervousness, anxiety, and excitement. I mused on the unpredictability of life. Just a month ago, I was still fantasizing about a lifetime with Julian. Now, I was about to spend the rest of my life with a man named Daniel. My mind envisioned Daniel's broad shoulders, lean waist, and 8-pack abs. I pressed my lips together and smiled. Well, that's not a bad deal. Early the next morning, I was woken up to have my makeup done and put on my gown. The makeup artist was my favorite, invited by Daniel from abroad. The gown had been reserved by him several years ago. The chosen venue for the engagement party was extremely private. Both families had invited only their closest relatives. During the formal family welcome ceremony, my brother Ethan's cell phone rang. None of us paid it any mind. He stepped back a few paces to answer, quietly chiding with a laugh, you didn't even come to Audrey's engagement party. And our Audrey has been chasing you and calling you big brother since she was little. On the other end of the line, Julian's voice faltered, laced with anger, who did you say is getting engaged? My brother Ethan was puzzled. Audrey, my sister. Didn't you receive an invitation? At that moment, my engagement ceremony was almost complete. My brother Ethan walked over, frowning, and asked, it's strange. Julian heard you were getting engaged and reacted like he'd swallowed a hornet's nest. Audrey, didn't you tell him? My heart tightened, and I quickly changed the subject. Before the engagement, Ethan had indeed instructed me to invite Julian to the engagement party as well. He said, he and I are good friends, and you've had his care in Southport these past years. It's only right to invite him, both emotionally and logically. I agreed outwardly, but secretly withheld the invitation. I told my brother Ethan that Julian said he was too busy to attend. A man so cold and heartless towards me had no right to attend my engagement party. I had thought that after I left Southport, he would focus on removing the obstacles between him and Chloe, breaking free from societal norms to be together. I also thought that, besides revenge, there would be no further contact between us. But I never expected him to suddenly show up at my engagement party. What bad luck. As annoyance filled my face, a piece of candy suddenly appeared before my eyes. Daniel dangled the candy in his hand. It's our own celebratory candy, we should at least have one, right? I couldn't help but smile. When in Rome, my fiancé. The engagement party ended. After seeing off all the guests and family, Daniel and I leaned together, lost in thought, chatting about past experiences and future hopes. Night gradually deepened, and Daniel hugged me reluctantly. Let's get married soon, then we won't have to separate and I won't have to take you home. I looked at his puppy dog eyes. I ruffled his hair and whispered in his ear, soon. Daniel drove towards my house. A damp drizzle fell from the sky. The surrounding foliage reflected the moonlight in the darkness. When we stopped at a red light, my cell phone rang. It was my brother Ethan calling. I smiled, urging Daniel, drive faster, Ethan's calling to hurry me home. Daniel replied, your wish is my command, Audrey. I answered, I'll be home soon, don't worry. Ethan, Audrey, has Julian called you? Hearing his name twice in one day, I had a bad feeling. I answered him, no. I was just about to say, don't mention that person ever again. My brother Ethan's voice expressed confusion, that's strange. He just drove all the way from Southport to our house. When he found out you weren't there, he asked me for the engagement party address and then immediately drove off again. He didn't look well, and he was driving fast. I'm a little worried. He teased, it seems you didn't call him Big Brother Julian for nothing all these years. He's so anxious to come wish you well for your engagement in person. A sense of dread welled up inside me. Blessing was unlikely. Going crazy was far more probable. After all, he had such an arrogant personality, yet I had quietly walked away and left him. He probably felt it was a massive blow to his pride. But I no longer had any obligation to consider his feelings. Daniel, drive carefully. Before I could finish, a sleek black luxury sedan burst into the dark, rainy evening. It was going so fast it kicked up layers of spray. Daniel slammed on the brakes, and the two cars barely avoided a collision. My heart stopped for a second. Daniel immediately unbuckled his seatbelt, asking if I was hurt. My face was pale, but I smiled and shook my head, gesturing for him not to worry. When I looked up again, out the window, I saw Julian open his car door and step out. The night rain blurred the car window, but even with just a silhouette, I knew for certain it was Julian. My hand trembled unconsciously. Daniel also noticed the approaching figure. Not understanding the situation, he squeezed my hand tightly to reassure me. Don't be afraid, he said. His steady gaze helped calm me down. That's right. This was Northwood. This was my territory. I wasn't afraid of Julian. As I was thinking, Julian had already reached the passenger side door. He raised a hand to tap on the glass, mouthing to me, Audrey, get out. Only then did Daniel realize this person was here for me. With a click, the driver's side door unlocked. Just as he was about to get out, I stopped him. I'll talk to him, I said firmly. Although in Southport were different places, their business ties were intricate, and the Davies and Julian families inevitably interacted. I didn't want to create unnecessary trouble for Daniel before we were even married. Seeing my serious expression, Daniel nodded. Babe, call me immediately if anything happens. As we spoke, Julian grew impatient. He knocked on the window again, his gaze growing more menacing. I unlocked the door, opened it, and closed it, isolating the sounds outside from the car's interior. A hint of a smile appeared in Julian's eyes. He took my hand and pulled me towards his car. I pulled my hand away. Julian frowned. Audrey, don't be difficult. You'll catch a cold getting wet in the rain. I chuckled. July. Ian, what are you doing here? He smiled too, but his smile didn't reach his eyes, carrying a chilling coldness. Should I just watch my girlfriend become someone else's wife? I scoffed, turned my head, and walked away. But he gripped my wrist tightly. Julian forcibly pulled me back, his palm clamping my chin, forcing me to look at him. Each word he spoke was distinct. Audrey, I never agreed to break up. His voice trembled slightly. You blocked me, changed your cell phone number, cleared out everything from our home. I don't care about any of that, as long as you come back. I shook him off. My cold eyes were devoid of any emotion. Julian, it's not about you not caring anymore, it's that I don't want you. I walked quickly away. Julian pursued me again. Before he could take another step, Daniel stepped in front of me. "Sir, have some respect." A furious, sinister aura emanated from Julian. His expression was taut. "What if I insist on taking her with me today?" Daniel casually dusted off his imaginary lapels and smiled faintly. "If I can't even protect my Audrey on the first day of our engagement, how could I ever hope for her trust in the future? Audrey isn't yours to call," Julian roared, throwing a punch at Daniel. The two men started fighting. No matter how much I yelled, no one stopped. "What are you doing?" Ethan rushed over and separated them. The two men stood on opposite sides, their eyes red with fury as they stared at each other. Ethan looked at me. "Audrey, take Daniel and go." I nodded, pulling Daniel away. Julian tried to follow, but Ethan held him back firmly. He snapped, "Julian, are you out of your mind?" I waited a long time in the living room before Ethan returned. The moment he entered and saw me on the sofa, he paused, then quickly strode over and hugged me. His voice was hoarse. "Audrey, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that person was Julian. I thought your past talk of liking him was just a childish crush." I gently shook my head, comforting him. "Ethan, it's not your fault. I just had a terrible relationship. I no longer hurt." Ethan's eyes welled up immediately. He soothed me. "We'll never go to Southport again. We'll stay home, where Ethan and my parents can protect you." I nodded, telling him to go get some rest. I didn't know how much Julian had said to Ethan. I didn't want to delve into it either. I had found my own happiness now, and I didn't care about that brief misstep in the past. But since Julian had come, there was one thing I hadn't been in a hurry to address. Now, I decided to put it on the agenda. I called for Butler, asking if he could handle it. Butler had watched me grow up, traveled extensively with my father in the past, and was well connected. Hearing about my ordeal, Butler immediately clenched his fists. That night, Julian was intercepted by a group of men and taken to the outskirts of town. It was the same abandoned factory. Only this time, he was the one hoisted high. The enforcers, holding up a cell phone screen, asked for confirmation. "Audrey, 100 slaps, can we begin?" "Begin." On the monitor, Julian looked up at me in disbelief. The first slap echoed. Then the second, the third. I watched his expression in the camera, gradually dimming, turning ashen, lifeless. A heavy sigh of relief escaped me. "Julian, when I loved you, I was willing to give you everything. When I stopped, you were as insignificant as an ant before me. From now on, we were completely severed, all debts settled." The next day, Julian left Northwood. I also breathed a sigh of relief. Everything returned to normal. I was busy entering the group, taking over company operations, and simultaneously preparing for the wedding. I also had to make time to go on dates with Daniel. 2 weeks later, Ethan came to my office. After looking around, he leaned against my desk and smiled. "Ms. Audrey, you're doing a great job." I raised an eyebrow. "Of course. You'd better work hard, or all the family assets will be mine. That's how the battle for company control always goes." Ethan burst out laughing. After a moment, his voice sounded again. "Julian has moved his company's operations to Northwood." My typing hand paused. "Let him." Seeing that my emotions were stable, Ethan left feeling reassured. The next evening, Ethan sent me the address to the club where we often went. When I arrived, the place was filled with all our friends, except for Ethan. "What kind of gathering is this?" I asked, smiling as I sat down. Ethan looked at me casually. "Don't rush, there's one more person." Just as he finished speaking, a server led someone in. It was Chloe. She was wearing a white dress, and her eyes widened in surprise at seeing so many people. A friend smiled and brought her in. I was sitting in a corner, and the lighting in the private room was dim, so she didn't notice me. As one person after another toasted Chloe, it dawned on me. Ethan and our friends were getting revenge for me. Chloe gradually sensed the atmosphere was off and made an excuse to leave. Someone blocked the door. "Miss Chloe, you've come all this way, and we've gone to such lengths to host you. Leaving now would be quite disrespectful." Chloe's smile was worse than a grimace as she claimed she wasn't feeling well and couldn't drink anymore. But no one indulged her. She took out her cell phone to make a call. Someone snatched her cell phone, asking with a laugh, "Are you looking for your brother Julian?" Someone else chimed in, "No need to look, we've already contacted him for you. He'll be here shortly." Chloe's eyes turned red. "If you bully me like this, Julian will never let you off the hook when he gets here." Everyone roared with laughter. "Is really that good to you, the adopted daughter of the Julian family?" Chloe curled into a ball amidst the laughter. Someone grabbed her and forcibly poured wine down her throat. She cried and struggled, but couldn't escape. I watched from the corner, feeling no sympathy. Oh. NLY, when the rain hits you, do you feel the pain? Once I had my revenge, we would be all squared. Julian suddenly burst in, rescuing Chloe from the circle of people. Chloe, protected behind him, sobbed as she complained. Julian shouted, "Are you all crazy?" Ethan sat in the center of the sofa. A beam of light fell on him. He took a sip of his drink, his voice cold as ice and whiskey. Julian, do you think you're the only one with a sister? Do you think only your sister is cherished? He smashed his wine glass on the floor. You can take Chloe. From this moment on, your brotherhood with me is shattered, just like that glass. The next time we meet, we'll be rivals. Julian's expression changed. But given the setting and Chloe's presence, he could only leave. Before walking out the door, he stopped and said, "Everything I owe Audrey, I will pay back. Get out." Ethan's voice boomed. The whole scene finally ended. Chloe had secretly followed to Northwood. Audrey went to Northwood, and Julian moved his business there. She felt uneasy and scared. Once in the car, she sobbed out her grievances to Julian, detailing the unfair treatment she had just endured. Julian listened quietly, and only when she finished did he respond, "But wasn't that how you treated Audrey back then?" Chloe froze. She looked at Julian in disbelief that he would say such a thing to her. "Julian, didn't you say I would always be the most important person to you?" That was before. Chloe's pupils constricted. Julian continued, "Chloe, you are just my sister from now on. Don't meddle in my affairs, and certainly don't cause any more trouble for the Julian family." He looked at her coldly, "Don't make my parents think that raising you was a mistake." Chloe completely froze. She knew that some things, some relationships, had changed. In the past, she knew in her heart that Julian held an ambiguous affection for her, one that went beyond sibling love. She felt the same, but's parents were traditional and conservative in their thinking. She knew they wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. She was afraid that if she took that step, she would lose her position as the Julian family's daughter. So, she used her status as his sister to bask in Julian's affection, which exceeded that of a brother. Until, while abroad, she recently spoke to Julian on the phone and heard him mention his current girlfriend, Audrey. She keenly sensed it. Julian had truly fallen. It wasn't like before, using a girlfriend as a pretense. He was genuinely in love. And he didn't even realize it himself. Chloe immediately returned home. She wouldn't allow such a thing to happen, and she also wanted to see what kind of person this Audrey was. And so, that led to the incident in the club's private room on her first day back. She publicly humiliated Audrey, wanting her to know that Chloe was the person Julian truly cared about most. But only 2 months had passed. Now, she was the one being humiliated and bullied. Ethan had concealed his identity, tempting and luring her to this setup party. Then, he had sneered, asking her, "Do you think my sister doesn't have a brother?" That alone would have been bad enough, but her crush on Ethan had been brief anyway. But now, even Julian had said, "Didn't you treat Audrey the same way before? Why are you feeling wronged now?" Chloe heard the sound of her world collapsing. Every night, I would see the familiar silhouette of the luxury sedan parked below my house. It would arrive late at night and leave at dawn. This went on for several months. Julian never contacted me again. He simply used this method to show me his obsession. But I only found it pathetic. If he knew it would come to this, why didn't he act differently in the first place? My genuine feelings for him were exhausted, and now he was trying to turn back. My wedding date with Daniel was approaching. Without my knowledge, they had already gone through several rounds of business rivalry. Both sides had wins and losses, but hadn't told me, nor had Julian. Only, the chief gossip-monger, tirelessly reported every detail to me. Then he seized the opportunity, entered the fray at the right moment, and reaped the benefits. I teased him, "Opportunist." He burst out laughing, "Only a fool wouldn't make money when the opportunity arises. And besides, I'll just give you a bigger dowry later." My eyes lit up, and I held out my hand to him. Deal. The night before my wedding, Northwood was treated to a magnificent fireworks display. The whole city was abuzz. 2 messages popped up on my cell phone from an unknown number. "Come out and watch the fireworks. Sending you off to be wed." I casually hit delete. Just fireworks. It wasn't like my husband couldn't afford to send them. He was just making himself a clown. Early the next morning, I woke up, did my makeup, changed into my bridal robe, and took photos. Before came to pick me up, he sent me a message, "Audrey, I'm here to marry you." I replied with a playful emoji. The wedding was grand, and the atmosphere was joyful. 3 days later, during my post-wedding visit to my parents' home, Ethan secretly handed me a stack of investment documents. He gave these, Ethan said, claiming their compensation for you. It's most of his fortune. He left it at that, and I took them. He certainly owed me this compensation. The next day, I instructed my financial advisor to donate all these assets and holdings. I am very happy. And I hope more people can find happiness too. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.